Okay, hi everybody. Well, I think the last time I worked with Dermot on a project, I seem to remember Alan and I were both filmed doing some sort of food talking head on a CD, which my daughter loves playing back to me and enjoys pointing out to me all my mistakes on it. So I hope that this project doesn't involve the talking head part. But obviously we've worked with Bangor University a lot over the years, and I'm very glad to be here today. In fact, our work as Value Wales sits under the portfolio of the Minister for Finance and Leader of the House, Mrs Hutt. And I know she was quite keen to be here today, but unfortunately couldn't. But she has asked me to express her support for this project, and obviously we're very pleased to be working with it. And I think all of us here want to see Welsh business flourish and develop good quality and strong suppliers and a supply base that will succeed. So obviously we're very pleased to see this project launched. Welsh Government, as I say, have worked with Bangor University over the years. So what I thought I'd do is just add a few points on some of the developments that I think we've seen over the previous years. And some links as to where this project fits very well with some of the initiatives that we're taking forward. So, just starting today with a few points on public procurement. I think we all recognise it's a very regulated process, and I think you've talked about the remedies directives. There are increasingly harsher penalties for making mistakes, and why that matters is it can have the issue of causing a lack of dialogue between buyers and suppliers, because there's sort of fear of having that dialogue outside of the procurement process. And what can result from that is, obviously, if the buyer has a less of an understanding of what the marketplace looks like and the makeup of the supply base of the particular thing that they're procuring, it can mean that there's a mismatch between the strategies taken and the marketplace. And that's an issue that I hope through this project we can look at, and I hope that the work on the remedies directives doesn't make that situation worse, because I think it's really important that buyers and suppliers develop a strong dialogue going forward. Another issue that's, and Andrew's talked about a lot, but where tender costs are excessive, clearly that disadvantages the smaller suppliers more than larger suppliers who can carry that. And that's something that is a kind of theme, I think, throughout what we're looking at. And yet, at the same time, the financial pressures on the public sector at the moment are so great that we need to find new ways of providing public services, and clearly innovative suppliers are going to be an important part of that. If we have a look at what we've sort of done over the last 5 years, Andrew is fundamental in setting up the Business Procurement Task Force, and I think we'll all recognise that we've seen a lot of change and improvement over the recent years. We've got Sell to Wales, the website that was actually set up. It was the first of its kind in the UK, 2003, and free for suppliers. We've taken that forward with the Tier 1. The ability for larger public sector contracts, the first tier supplier to advertise through that. And I think there's a lot more we can do there. I won't dwell on the barriers to procurement, because obviously we've touched on that a lot, but that was extremely helpful research. It showed a number of the issues, looking at the need to simplify the process, greater transparency, big focus, as I recall, on the quality of the feedback, so we can actually inform the suppliers of what the issues are. And I think that's something that's really important in what we're doing. And certainly, we are focusing on taking it forward. And yes, indeed, it's in the manifesto. So I can assure you it's top of our priorities. And we're currently very active on 9 of the 16 recommendations. The Supplier Qualification Information Database, or SQUID, as I know one person in the audience helped us to name. That is really looking at, for those who aren't familiar with it, this is where we're looking at a standard approach to the tricky issue of pre-qualification, and where the public sector is asking the similar questions, is always going to be needing the similar information. We're well underway with getting a common question set together. Not all questions within the PQQ will be in that, but at least it'll cover those things that are always asked. And we've got a really good, I think, support we've had from public sector buyers, and from the supply community in looking at that. And the current draft is being piloted quite successfully at the moment. So I think there was a good initiative set forward, and we've actually taken some of that forward. I think we have stepped up, but obviously there's more we can do. Some of the results from what we've done so far, just the last year actually. And I think some of this will be, since Andrew moved on, we've taken it forward, and with a lot of support across the public sector, lower value contracts are being advertised. I mean, obviously Carmarthen's a prime example of people who've taken that forward. Welsh Government has also done so, and outcomes, because we can monitor through Sale to Wales, we've seen a 24% increase in that type of contract being more openly advertised. We've seen, I think we've touched on already, that the movement of expenditure into Wales-based suppliers, since 2003. I think up to so far, Mike will probably correct me, I'm probably not up to date, but I think we've seen virtually £15 billion worth of contract opportunities now advertised through Sale to Wales. Looking at some of the analysis of the spend, we looked particularly at expenditure, so individual suppliers winning various contracts worth between 150,000 and 5 million. We looked at who they were, what makeup that population had. And of the nearly 3,500 suppliers in that section, about 60% of those were in the SME section, which I feel is a positive way forward. I think 1,800 or 51% of those were based in Wales. So we have seen sort of 1,500 SMEs are actually getting through and winning public sector work. Clearly, there's more to do, but some of the things that we've been doing over the recent years are having effect. We've seen the Can-Do toolkit. We kind of call it community benefits, as it's for our terminology. That's an example of where you look for the wider benefits, and we've been able to persuade or work with projects that are worth about £2 billion now, which includes some of the roads talked about, and more latterly sort of branching into other non-construction related areas. And that is going to be a big push continuing going forward. Looking at the squid and looking at construction, which is obviously an important sector, where we've seen greater adoption of this simpler process in the last year, and in fact 21 of the last 40 contracts awarded to construction firms have been won by Wales-based suppliers who we know by looking at industry are traditionally smaller than their competition in England. So, good promising signs, and I wanted to raise that because I think what it means is with this project, we can work on a firm base and also an appetite to make a difference. But there's a lot more to do, and I just thought, well, I'll touch on a few of the opportunities that we've got to link the projects together and to push further for change. Our next, in Value Wales, our next challenge is to make this squid approach to pre-qualification electronic, and don't underestimate the issues involved in that. But what we aim to do is to provide a facility through Sale to Wales and working with our colleagues in BETS so that suppliers' answers to these standard questions can actually be held, and they haven't got to rewrite them every time. They can automatically draw them down. We estimate that it costs business about £20 million to tender to pre-qualify for the Welsh public sector. So anything that we can take out of that cost where it's not necessary is going to be to everyone's benefit. We've got a big opportunity with the Sale to Wales refresh, which is going on at the moment, to make that site make the user experience for buyers and suppliers better. Different type of opportunity, but obviously we've got all of the Horizon project in Ynys Môn. We're starting to talk to that about how we can facilitate tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 opportunities through the supply chain. I mean, you're talking about a £3 billion investment there, 6,000 jobs, of which I think 2,000 are likely to be non-specialist and the sort of thing where we can actually start to build strong Welsh supply chains. So the link here being Sale to Wales and the investment there, and I hope the winning in tendering project, got a clear practical example that it could perhaps work with to make sure that we get the right results. I touch on the Homegrown Talent project because I think both speakers so far have talked about the need for skills and upskilling within the public sector. We have successfully bid into Europe for funding, and through this we will be providing additional training support for leaders and budget holders, how they can use procurement to make a difference, public sector buyers, and also we've got a project where we're actually taking young people and putting them through a series of placements and training so that they can get the right approach to procurement and understand the wider context and all the different sectors and the different ways that things work. So I think there's a lot of commonality between that project and some of the strands here, and I hope we will clearly work together to make that work. A number of projects through the efficiency and innovation agenda, which Welsh Government's been pushing, and then clearly winning in tendering project itself. And I thought I'd just touch on a couple of the links. I might have got my strands in a different order to your book, I think, but if you'll let me off for that. So, I mean, starting with the remedies, the law, I mean, clearly that's going to be, looking at the lessons learned from cases is clearly going to be very helpful to all of us to avoid mistakes. So far as I know, unless someone tells me, I think Wales so far has a clean bill of health on this. And I hope that stays. And I do think that partly that may be because certainly I know, ministers and, Andrew and our current minister have always been very open to discussing issues with suppliers. And I do hope that even if we examine this, that we maintain that sort of dialogue and it doesn't become litigious, because I personally think that's really important. But we'll be very interested to look at that. And I think, that making it clearer in plain English can only be good for all of us, because the more we understand each other, the clearly better relationship there'll be. The lower value tendering, I think where we can help there, obviously I know you're going to be working with a couple of individuals particularly, but obviously all the data that we can provide through Sale to Wales is open to you. So we can look at the buying patterns and marry that with where it's worked and how that's worked for industry. So I think we can work together very strongly there. The tender review service is a great idea. I think whilst we want buyers to be giving the feedback to suppliers, and I know we encourage them to do that, and that is part of the role. Having someone independent sometimes to talk to makes it easier to hear the message. And I think we want Welsh business to flourish. So clearly we want it to be able to put its best foot forward when it's putting documents together. And if that can help with that, then I think all of us from a procurement point of view would encourage that. And the competency work, clearly be helpful. I think we've identified links with the training programme, so I think we can work together on that definitely. And lastly, with the diagnostics toolkit, I think colleagues in the audience who work with the BETS division would agree that there are opportunities there to work with the Supply Development Service and enhance really the offering that they can provide. So I think in the sort of opportunities that I've covered and my understanding of the project, clearly I think there's a lot of commonality and a lot of areas where we can sort of strengthen what each other's doing. So very glad that you've been successful with it, and look forward to working with you further. I thought, well, I'll just add a last sort of thoughts really. First point, just it's pretty obvious really, but in the current financial climate, we really need to do all we can to take unnecessary cost out of the process of procuring public goods and services and providing public services, make sure that we're putting the money in the right places. So the more that this process can help to encourage that agenda, then that will be good. And one example will be looking at electronic tools, which I think I put as the second point, because that is an obvious way that we can take unnecessary cost out and improve transparency. And I would certainly encourage both of us really to sort of focus on that as the future. They're not always great, they don't always work perfectly, but I mean if we look at them together and we expect that to be the way forward, then I think we can make sure they make a difference. And the last couple of points, I'll probably reiterate what I say really, but I think we do need to take a mature approach to risk and based on dialogue, because whilst you do have the remedies directives, it would be a shame if that had the impact of stopping us talking to each other and public buyers not making the changes they need to make because of fear of what the consequences would be. And I think, if we can have a mature approach to that, I think we've got a real way forward. And my last point being to the audience, and I suppose to ourselves as well, there's European money here, we've got a chance to make a difference. It's only going to actually work if we both engage, provide information into the project, and make sure that you've got the tool, the information that you need to work with. So just a message to encourage that and say that you've got our support in that respect.